Good evening. You're watching To The Point. I'm Akshita Nandagopal, and this evening we're going to be talking about two big superstars, considered to be some of the biggest superstars of this country, Akshay Kumar and Aamir Khan. Now you'd expect that when both of their films would be out in theatres, a couple of years ago, it would be the talk of the town. You'd see theatres running packed houses, full house for at least a few weeks. What's happening today is the exact opposite. Aamir Khan's Laal Singh Chaddha and Akshay Kumar's Raksha Bandhan, both of them on day one have performed below par. And that's why we're asking the question tonight, is Bollywood now dying a slow death? All right, let's take this across to our panelists who are joining us this evening. Tanishta Chatterjee, actor, will be joining us in just a bit. We've got Raja Sen, film critic, who's also with us. Subhrashtra, political analyst, is with us. Good evening to all of you. Raja Sen, I'd like to begin with you. And I don't mean to, make this sound extremely far-fetched, but is this the death of Bollywood? I started off talking about how big these two stars are. Years ago, there was so much hype about any of the films releasing. Today, empty theatres.
Well, I think the public is not ready to accept mediocrity in the name of cinema just because it has stars attached. I think for the last 10, 12 years, we had gotten into a bit of a holding pattern where big stars, regardless of what the film is like, regardless of the script, were churning out movies and people were going for these opening weekends. They were packing the theaters. I think that pattern has definitely changed, and I think film stars will have to work harder and earn back the audience's trust by choosing good projects, by choosing films that really, activate an exciting word of mouth. But is Bollywood dead? I really do think those rumors might be a bit exaggerated.
But, the numbers speak for themselves. When was the last time Bollywood actually delivered a hit? I think it was the Kashmir Files.
No, there was Gangubai, and then there was the biggest hit of this year, which was, the Bhool Bhulaiya 2. So I think public is interested in movies. I think, of course, the South films are doing well, definitely. I think a lot of the the Hindi movie stars might have become complacent, and they have been choosing films just which are meant to make them look good as opposed to films that might actually be good. But I think it'll just take one hit. One hit is all it takes to change this tide and stop this naysaying.
But that's what people thought Bhool Bhulaiya 2 would do. That's clearly not the case. But you made an interesting point about content being supreme, and that's perhaps a message the audiences are trying to set out. Let me open this up further. Subhrashtra, Laal Singh Chaddha and Raksha Bandhan, both of course have been mired in controversy before they were released. Some said that maybe it's an attempt to create some publicity. But clearly, at least going by the numbers, maybe this boycott trend has worked.
Yes, I think partly what Raja said is true, partly what you say is also true, but I also feel that, over the past couple of decades, I think, we've started giving too much importance to actors and directors beyond their craft, which is of either filmmaking or acting. And I think which is why certain sense of, this sense of ideological fidelity that perhaps came with it, and the tussle that has sort of happened on social media with more democratization of space, these are all these ingredients which are now coming to the fore, and we see the kind of response that we do. Now, for example, with respect to Laal Singh Chaddha, I haven't watched the film. I don't intend to watch the film, and it is nothing to do with the whole intellectual idea of boycott at the moment. It is mostly to do with the fact that as a student of literature, I have never really been excited by the idea of any adaptation by far. So I'm not going to do I'm not going to waste my money and time on in going to a theater and spending those couple of hours watching a movie watching the remake of a movie which I find is iconic. Also look at the context. The context of Vietnam War cannot be replicated in Laal Singh Chaddha. But as I said, it's and as Raja also said, I think it's the whole idea of actors taking center stage, their personalities taking center stage, and this assumption that whatever they'll touch, whatever they are going to enact, is going to be the holy grail. That I think that myth has broken, and that will continue to break. On the whole question of boycott, I do feel that yes, it is far too much to call for a collective boycott of any product, whether it is by any actor or any director. But I also feel that the whole idea of boycott comes from a certain sense of democratic freedom. There are actors out there who put out their performances. They are not performing for themselves or a clique. So when you put out yourself out in the public domain, then public is going to react the way they react. So why to take this thing so personally? I've been watching a couple of Bollywood actors and directors reveling in the fact as if, you know, having the tag of a boycott is really goes on to say a lot about their intellectual smartness. But at the end of the day, they're also trying to vie for commercial success. See, we are not living in an age where we have parallel cinema that used to exist at the times of, you know, Shabana Azmi and, you know, when all of them were at the positions that they were in. We don't have anything called parallel cinema at the moment. There are short films being produced, brilliant ones at that. Most of these actors, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Manoj Vajpayee comes from Bihar, Pankaj Tripathi, they're all amazing actors who have done amazing amount of work on OTT, and, you know, supported small time productions.
Doing better right now.
That kind of movement is already there. Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
I think it's
so
easy to boycott
totality,
something
it's
that
a
you
good
don't want
space
to
be
watch in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot of stuff that's been said. You know, at some point, there were fans online who were saying things against Virat Kohli, taking a stand against, you know, supporting an Islamic player. I think the problem is that people, you know, people are willing to boycott these movies because they don't want to go to watch these movies in the first place. At no point was Laal Singh Chaddha something that was exciting from the trailers or that people were already enthusiastic about. It's just the boycott is just one part of the conversation, which I think is a smoke screen. Basically, when you're saying you're boycotting Raksha Bandhan, I think that's the most press a Raksha Bandhan has gotten, is of the conversation about the boycott.
But that's what I was referring to, Raja, earlier, when I said that, you know, this is a term that's used very often called shock advertising, right? Which they actually do by going ahead with creating controversies or boycott trends or whatever. But is it also, when you look at Laal Singh Chaddha, you know, it dealt with issues of people's sentiment and the comments about Aamir Khan, you know, intolerant to India, the scenes in PK, all of that coming back to haunt him so much so that he had to apologize one day before the film released. Has that actually affected the box office numbers?
No,
Is this boycott trend, this cancel culture actually coming real?
I don't think it's true at all. I think if that was the case, then these other films would do very well. As we see, the boycott trends are primarily, you know, a right-wing phenomenon as of now. They are the more voluble boycotters. And
no, I don't agree, Raja. I don't agree, and I think no,
yes,
that's not the case.
Okay. But because
I'm sorry, that's not the case. Because in Kashmir Files,
let Raja finish his point, Shubhrashra. I'll come back to you. Let Raja just finish his point.
Yeah, I'll just make an example that basically.
Yeah,
even
but
when
please allow me an intervention because Raja sort of started off while I was speaking.
Raja, go ahead.
Yes. So when you talk about Raksha Bandhan, even with Raksha Bandhan, the boycott was all about the writer of the film, Kanika Dhillon, and her anti-Hindutva tweets from a few years ago. This one is about intolerance in India. So the call is for Aamir Khan to be sent to Pakistan or some such thing. So if these right-wing trolls are the ones leading the boycott charge, they are the more voluble ones, then the films which star the, you know, actors with the right-wing dispensation or actresses who are, you know, who are making a very valid or very loud right-wing stance, those should be doing well, but they aren't either. I think the public is just tired of a lot of movies.
Okay.
They're used to watching films
you make a
at
valid
home.
point.
They know that these films
you make a valid point, Raja. Tanishra, I'll just come to you in a bit. I promise Shubhrashra I'll give her a chance to respond. So Shubhrashra, go ahead.
A couple of points here. This whole thing of labeling every boycott as a part of right-wing troll culture is absolutely preposterous. I don't think when Kashmir Files came, there were a lot of online raw about Kashmir Files as well. Please tell me, Raja, did it come from the right-wing so-called trolls? Please don't use words loosely, na? No, hold on. Raja, again, you are interrupting. I didn't interrupt while you were speaking. So please have the patience. Have the democratic patience to hear the other person out.
Right.
If you guys are so much advocates of democracy, hear the other person out. The point is, you guys don't like this right-wing dispensation and have a lot of things to say about the right-wing dispensation, but the very same people who go and give these media bites are the same people who will go and meet the union ministers at the drop of a hat. So why do you do that? Why do you need that validation? If you're so artistic and so whatever in your own right, then live in your cocoon and live in your bubble. Point number two, you know, there's this whole round about Aamir Khan going to meet Himanta Biswa Sharma. If you are so this thing about Hindutva ideology, I think the greatest icon of Hindutva today in front of the youngsters is Himanta Biswa Sharma. Why is the film industry not taking a stand against Aamir? Don't smile and smirk. These are valid, genuine questions that you'll have to counter. Also, right-wing you talk about right-wing trolls, and you want business from the very same trolls. Because if you don't, then put a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie that no person who associates themselves with the Indian right should ever come and watch this film. Because we are not making a film for them. You wouldn't want to do that because you want to target a certain TG and you want that your ideological nonsense should be appreciated by the TG.
I think
I didn't want to get into this whole discussion of what is wrong with Laal Singh Chaddha.
That's very.
But let me tell you, Subhrashtra essentially, Subhrashtra, what Subhrashtra is trying to say here,
to take shits lying low.
I think what Subhrashtra is saying here is it fair to say right-wing trolls for everything? And why is the word trolls only associated with one side?
I'll tell you very quickly, I'll tell you, and not to trample on anything the other panelists might have said, but the fact is that when you are seeing this, we spoke about brouhaha, about Kashmir files, but there were no calls to boycott it or to ban it. There were people talking about how the film was problematic.
Raja. There were calls to boycott and ban it.
You living in a La land, there were.
No, there were a lot of calls to boycott and ban it.
Raja.
From the other side.
You want to whitewash a certain area.
One second. It's a narrative, and you are allowed to give your side of the narrative. We are allowed to disagree with that side of the narrative. Now, having said that,
I can give you. While you speak, I'll give you a tweet by website handle from here. Let Raja finish his point. You want me to finish his point?
You are saying that does the film industry want business from the same people they are laboring right-wing trolls? No, because I'm saying I do not believe that these trolls and these boycotts are organic and real people. I believe most of them are faceless. I believe the number of duplication in tweets and the kind of misinformation that's circulated between them, the same video clip thousands of times, I believe these are the things that are the work of some sort of other sinister bodies and not people sitting and boycotting. Yes. So I don't think we are losing out on their business.
Okay, I would really invite, let me put this out as a public invitation. I would invite Raja Sen to come to Delhi sometime and I'll make him meet at least 500 people who are real people, who have a real beef to pick with not just Laal Singh Chaddha, but the kind of movies that have whitewashed a certain part of history and have also wanted to, give a certain narrative which is absolutely false. They're real people, Raja. Please move out of your La La land. They're not bots alone. There might be some bots, but they're not bots alone.
No, I think there is a very real debate today.
Right of a citizen to dissent.
No, and I think there's a very real educated debate today about every single film, about how things are portrayed historically, religiously, etc., which spills onto social media as well. Tanishta has been waiting very, very patiently, listening to what's been happening. Tanishta, you're from the industry. Are you concerned with what's happening, how Laal Singh Chaddha, how Raksha Bandhan are performing? And is there a concern that going forward, actors have to think twice about everything they say and everything they put out?
I think I agree with both our panelists that, look, Bollywood needs to introspect in terms of the content that we are making. Having said that, obviously, I think the cancel culture might be affecting the box office to a certain extent because social media is a powerful tool and it does affect people. It does dissuade people from going into, I know personally people who just have read things on the net and dismissed it. I think that the audience has an absolute right to decide whether they want to watch a star or a story or a film. But having said that, they should be able to make a conscious choice of their own. But in some ways, this whole cancel culture is not always allowing them to do so. Having said all this, I think this whole hate culture and cancel culture, I find all this very funny as well. I think, we are taking entertainment too seriously. If some star has said something at some point, whether he said it or not, we are actually taking it to heart.
The flip side to that is that these actors have millions of followers, and being a public figure, you have a certain responsibility.
I am talking about those millions of followers, that they are taking it too seriously. It is entertainment. You like the actor, you like the story, you go and watch it. If you don't like it, you don't watch it. What is this? I mean, what is this thing that, oh, you said this? This is fighting like 7-year-olds. So as a nation, I'm more worried about other things than just Bollywood. As a nation, I think we're kids. Like, this is like 7-year-old saying, Mama, he said this to me, so I don't want to talk to him anymore.
Shubhrashtra, would you like to respond to what Tanishta said?
This is just, and it's not only about films, it's about everything. Like, we have so much animosity inside the nation today. We are constantly fighting between this right wing and left wing and, you know, middle path, and it's taking everything out in our lives.
I think we're misunderstanding here. Laal Singh Chaddha, the controversy of Laal Singh Chaddha has nothing to do with right wing, left wing.
But boycott culture does, right?
How?
Has to do, the boycott culture has something to do with something he apparently said a few years back.
Sure,
right?
but how does it have to do with right wing and left wing, Tanishta?
Oh, come on. That has a very different, like, you know, it has a demarcated line. We all know that.
Why don't we say it directly then? What are you hinting at? Tanishta, say it directly.
I'm saying it directly. I'm saying that there is definitely a demarcated line there, that there is, like, you know, there are people who think in a particular way, there are other people who think in a different way. Now, I think both the thoughts should exist. It should exist in a healthy way. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree.
Okay.
We disagreed with that actor. We can say that, hey, I disagreed with the comment of that actor. Now, when the film is coming out, why is that reference coming out? It should be purely on the basis of the trailer and the film, that, hey, this trailer doesn't interest me. I find it boring or dated or whatever it is.
Fair enough.
Or, you know, I find it nice.
You know, you make a valid, comment. You're saying respect content and judge by the content of that particular film. Shubhrashtra, your response to what Tanishta has to say.
Yes. You know, I completely agree with Tanishta in whatever, you know, she has said, with just one rider. The problem, Tanishta, is that because, you know, you brought in the reference of what Aamir said a couple of years ago about being unsafe. Let me tell you what he said. He talked about India being an unsafe country and perhaps not being, you know, comfortable with the environment here and all of that. Now, when as a public personality, you are putting yourself out there beyond your craft and beyond your art, and you are meddling in politics and in a democracy, which is, by the way, the world's largest democracy and the most vibrant one at that, then you will have to accept brickbats and dissent and, you know, loud voices perhaps from the other end. Now, you and I may not like the idea of loud voices. You and I, you know, might want to be in a situation where we may be able to look at movies or films or novels purely on the basis of content. But all the readers and all the audience is not going to be as removed from politics as we are, or as we would like them to believe. So this culture is going to stay. I'm not taking a stand pro-boycott culture or pro-cancel culture. I'm just saying that Bollywood as an industry has to deal with the fact that the audience has become more assertive. Gone are the days when you could make fun of a certain section of, you know, religious sentiment or identity and get away with it. These things are out in the open now. We may go into detail and discuss the content of individual films, etc., but I think that would take away the essence of the debate. The point is, I think, which I said to Raja as well, we need to learn to dissent with decency.
Okay, important message there. Raja said, sure, Tanishta, just quickly, because I'm running out of time.
Yeah, I think in all this, the whole thing is that as a nation, we have to understand that Bollywood is entertaining us, and we can't take it more seriously than that. It's not a political movement. It doesn't change anything. We go into the theater, we enjoy ourselves, and we come out. And
but then maybe, Tanishta, the flip again, you know, maybe then the actors also need to realize that they're out there to entertain. My final comment.
That's what I'm saying. You have to distinguish the person, you know, the art and artist, because that's him, his personal view about something. Yeah. Now, whether I want to watch a film or not is based on whether I find this trailer entertaining, whether I find this actor, you know, compelling.
Understand. I have very little time. One last comment from Raja Sen, because one aspect of this discussion that I wanted to bring up is this whole narrative, all social media, that, you know, South films embrace our culture. South films is the future, and everyone says boycott Bollywood, watch South films. What do you have to say about that, Raja?
Well, I think the South films have done really well. I think that over the last couple of years, they've opened up to a lot of people have been used to watching films at home. They're used to watching films which are dubbed or which are subtitled, and they are getting to see really well-made films. Largely, when you see a Pushpa or an RRR, you're seeing a well-mounted film where you can see the scale. And I think one of the reasons for that is the budget and all of that is prioritized on the film and not so much on the actor as we are in in Hindi cinema. So definitely that priority is there. But as a
Okay.
closing thing, I'd just like to tell you that I strongly believe that no matter what you think about boycotts or cancel culture, I believe that a good film will succeed. A good film that connects with the audience will succeed regardless of a boycott, no matter how loud the cries of boycott are. If the first reviews of these films were any good, they were not, right? The reviews for Laal Singh
They
Chaddha
were
and
very
Raksha
mixed,
Bandhan were
yes.
not good reviews at all. But if the reviews were good, if the first people who came out of the theater said,
Okay.
these are great films, let's go watch it, then the crowd would come back in.
All
I
right.
think people have lost faith in Hindi cinema because they've seen a lot of really bad films.
Okay.
And so they aren't willing to just experiment with anything until they really know this is going to be good. So
All
they're
right, fair
waiting for
point.
that.
I'll end it with that. I've completely run out of time. Raja Sen, Tanishta Chatterjee and Shivrasha, thank you very much for joining us here on India Today. The message essentially from all our panelists, whatever they disagreed and agreed upon, is that the audience today is the superstar. It's no longer about which big actor is in what film. It's all about content. I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks very much for tuning in.